Hi, I'm Scott Voak with Pacific Sotheby's International Realty, and today I want to talk to you about how to value investment property. I want to go over 3 basic tools that investors use at different levels to evaluate different properties and discern if it's a good investment. The first one I want to talk about is the most basic. It's called gross rent multiplier. Basically what you're doing is you're taking the value of the house divided by the annual rent. So the higher number, the better. And this works for individual houses, duplexes, threeplexes, or apartment buildings. Gross rent multiplier is a very well-known number. It also folds very well into something called the 1% rule. There's a lot of websites that talk about the 1% rule, and that rule says that you want the monthly rent to be worth 1% of the purchase price. So if you've got $1 million property, you should be getting $10,000 a month in rent. Now, those of you in my hometown of San Diego who own investment property just kind of fell off your chairs because we don't see that around here. But rest of the country, that is a real rule that people use. 1% rule, that relates to a gross rent multiplier of about 8, okay? So gross rent multiplier and 1% rule go hand in hand, same kind of metrics. You're strictly looking at rent versus property value. The second that dives a little bit deeper into this is called cap rate. And this is what you see most institutional investors use. Apartment buildings, office buildings, strip malls, they're all rated based on a cap rate. Cap rate works the following way. You take your total rent minus all your expenses except financing. So it basically assumes a cash purchase. But you're looking at how the building itself does. If I make $10,000 rent and I have $4,000 in expenses, and that's all expenses except financing. So we're talking about utilities, you're talking about property management, you're talking about property taxes, everything except financing. Subtract that from your rent. So let's say you're at $10,000 rent, your entire expenses were $4,000 a month. That gives you $6,000 a month of net rent. Times 12 months is $72,000 a year of net rent. You divide that by the value of the building. Not your equity, but the straight value. Because once again, we're looking at how well does the building do. We're not worried about how you financed it. So if the building's worth $1 million and you collected $72,000 in total rent after expenses, your cap rate is 7.2 or 72 divided by $1 million, which is a 7.2% cap rate. Now, in San Diego, if you're buying an investment property right now, you're looking at anywhere between a 3, maybe a 4.25, 4.5% cap rate. Outside of the state, our investors are not making purchase unless it's 8 to 10% on the cap rate. So once again, the return's much better. But this is not taking into account any financing concerns. The last measure is what I see a lot of individual investors use because it is more meaningful to the individual person buying 1 or 2 properties. And that is called cash on cash return. So basically what that is your net rent that we talked about in cap rate, but then you also subtract your mortgage payments. So you end up with a lower number. So if your net rent, like in our last example, was $72,000 a year, but your mortgage payments are $32,000, then your bottom line income is $40,000. That's the cash coming in. Now in this case, we don't divide it by the building value, we divide it by your equity. So basically you're getting how much cash are you generating on how much cash you put in. So that's the idea. Cash on cash returns. Back in 2011, when we were buying San Diego properties, we were getting a 10% cash on cash return. The best way to look at a cash on cash return is it's the equivalent of what your money would have to earn in a CD to give you the same return. So if you took your entire down payment and put it in Bank of America and it earned 3%, that's equivalent to a 3% cash on cash return on an investment. Okay, so those are the 3 methods that are used to evaluate properties most normally. You've got your gross rent multiplier, which also ties into the 1% rule that we hear a lot of small investors use. Cap rate, which is used by most institutional investors and does not take into account financing. And then cash on cash return, which is the metric that we use the most with our individual investors, trying to figure out how much return are we getting for them on their deposit. I'm Scott Voak. That was a primer on investment metrics. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.